What's your true ghost story? Something heard, felt, or seen. 1. Occasionally, around 1 a.m., I hear soft singing from downstairs. The singing is soothing, helping me fall asleep. I know it's not my parents, as they work night shifts and only return home around 11 a.m. or noon. The singing sounds like a woman's voice, like a mother singing a lullaby to her child. One time, when I came home from school, I saw someone sitting on the sofa. I walked in and said, "Hi, I'm back from school." A faint voice replied, "Hello." When I entered the living room, I saw a shadowy figure of a woman, like a dark light, stand up and vanish. Perhaps that's the one who sings at night. 2. Over 10 years ago, after my father passed away, I had a terrifying dream, possibly that night or the night after. In the dream, I was in my childhood home, where it seemed like a party was happening because it was crowded and noisy. I heard chatter and music, but just sat in the living room, observing. My grandfather was there, talking to me, though I don't recall the details. Then I saw my father standing, looking at me. I was overwhelmed, sobbing uncontrollably. He came over and hugged me, as if saying goodbye, but then his hug tightened and he wouldn't let go. I panicked, trying to break free, but I couldn't. In real life, I started gasping, unable to breathe, like I was drowning. I struggled to wake up, panting, terrified, and crying intensely, not understanding what had happened. At the same time, my wife and I heard our son crying loudly from his room. I hadn't told her about my dream yet. She went to check on him, and when she returned, the story got even scarier. Our son said he woke up because he heard me crying, but what caught his attention was a dark figure standing in the hallway, right by his door, staring at him. He said it was my father, and the figure terrified him so much that he screamed. I couldn't explain what my son and I experienced that night, but it was truly horrifying. 3. When I was young, I was playing with Legos when I felt a chill. I turned around and saw a boy about my age floating down the stairs, turning the corner, and continuing down the basement stairs, where he disappeared. The boy looked black and white clothes, very pale skin, and light gray hair and eyes. Years later, I told my family about this. It turned out my sister had seen him too, on a different occasion. 4. One morning, my wife woke up at 3:28 and smelled a strong coffee aroma. Thinking I was brewing coffee, she went to the kitchen, but it was pitch dark, no coffee, and I was still asleep. The next day, she mentioned it, thinking she imagined it, but the following night, at the same time, I also smelled an intense coffee scent. We've also experienced other strange things. A woman in white stood watch over us while we slept, but vanished through the wall when noticed. An old man in black pants and a wife-beater t-shirt often walked into the kitchen. We heard voices and footsteps on the main floor while in the basement. Our house was a 70-year-old wooden one. Once, a plastic spray bottle was thrown hard onto the floor, shattering, Sometimes we smelled the strong perfume of an older woman. Our cat often panicked, fur standing on end, and hid under the bed. I visited the city archives to research the house. Longtime neighbors said these ghosts might be Joe and Rose, the first owners. When we described them, they immediately recognized them. We lived there for 21 years, moving out in 2019. Oddly, these incidents often intensified in September, for no clear reason. 5. This morning, while in the bathroom getting ready for a test, I stood in front of the mirror and heard a girl's voice say, "Mom." At that moment, only my husband and I were awake. No one else was there. 6. One night, I was driving past a cemetery on a quiet road, about 2 blocks away. I saw a green traffic light and a figure standing in the middle of the road, swaying back and forth for about 20 seconds. The figure had long hair and wore a thick coat. As I got closer, the light turned red and the figure moved to the right, as if crossing the street at the stop. I looked around but saw no one. I turned right, driving slowly to look, but found nothing, as if the figure had vanished. My wife, who was with me, saw the exact same thing. 7. One night, as a teenager, I was going to my room. I saw the light switch on the ceiling moving up and down on its own. I turned off the light, but it flicked back on. Terrified, I ran to the living room as fast as I could. I was alone in the house at the time. 8. When I was in middle school, my brother was about 7. One evening, my mom finished cooking and told me to call my brother and his friends down to eat. My brother, his friends Ava and Mason, were playing Xbox upstairs on a double mattress on the floor. Marcelo, another friend, was sitting a bit away. I went downstairs, but after 5 minutes, they still hadn't come. I shouted for each of them: Andrew, Ava, Mason, Marcelo. Come down for dinner. Everyone came down except Marcelo. When I asked where he was, it turned out he hadn't even been there that day. It still gives me chills. 9. Around 2005, I moved into a new house. One evening, my wife and 2 kids were out, and I was in the basement playing Halo. Mid-evening, I heard the front door open and close, with the bell on the handle ringing clearly. Then, I heard footsteps crossing the house. From the front door to the far corner of the dining room, thinking my family was back. I found it odd that I only heard 1 set of footsteps instead of 3, and no voices. A few minutes later, I checked and found the front door locked, my wife's car not in the driveway or garage, and no one upstairs. 10. A few years ago, while staying at a lodge, I felt like I was being watched. I started seeing faces that no one else saw, which terrified me. Later, I learned the lodge was built on a cemetery. That was my mysterious experience. 11. My brother worked night shifts at an 18th century rural hotel in northern England. One night, a female guest came to the front desk, pale and carrying her suitcase, saying she couldn't sleep and wanted to leave. When he asked why, She said she kept hearing children laughing all night, and one child holding a candle entered her room, standing at the foot of her bed, refusing to leave. The next morning, my brother told the manager. The manager said it was normal, as the place was a school and kindergarten over 100 years ago before becoming a hotel. 12. I was reading these stories when my cat stared at me from the dark hallway, its eyes glowing in the light. I've had many strange experiences, but one stands out. My 4-year-old son woke me at 3 a.m., crying from a nightmare. I calmed him down, and he said he was hungry. We went to the kitchen, and I got him cereal. While eating, he suddenly looked up and casually said a boy who woke him was crying in the corner, nodding toward an empty spot by the table, thinking he was teasing. I asked why the boy was crying. He said, his mom crashed her car into the road, and he's trying to figure out what happened. He woke me up. Tell him to go, thinking he was still scared from the nightmare. I looked at the corner and said, "Hey kid, go back to your mom." We sat there. He finished his cereal and handed me the bowl, joking. I asked if the boy was gone. He replied seriously, "Yes." He said the ambulance is coming. It's okay. They're all dead anyway. Less than a minute later, police cars and ambulances with sirens blared past our house. I got chills, hair standing on end, but told myself it was just a kid's imagination and a coincidence. We went back to sleep. A few days later, a neighbor mentioned a major accident a mile away, where a woman driving too fast flipped her car on a turn, and no one survived. It happened at 3 a.m., when my son woke me. I didn't dare ask if there was a boy in the car. 13. I went camping with friends at a family's property. They had an old shed full of tools and old furniture, creepy with a dirt floor and even a clown painting in the loft. That night, we drank beers by the campfire. I was the last one up. While peeing near the shed, I stood about 5 feet from a window and looked inside. A fluorescent light was on, and I saw something like a piece of paper or money floating, moving in a smooth, rhythmic figure 8 pattern, as if swaying. I thought it might be a moth, but it darted into a dark corner with a wooden chair, giving me chills. I watched for about 20 seconds, feeling like an eternity. Later, I sat by the fire, finished my beer, smoked, and played Robot Unicorn Attack 2 on my phone since everyone was asleep. I saw my friend Mark come out of his tent to pee and go back. I decided to sleep, crawled into my tent, and passed out. The next morning, at breakfast, Mark said, "I saw you by the fire late. You guys stayed up late." I said probably 2-3 a.m. Mark asked, "Who was with you?" I said I was alone. But he said when he went to pee, he saw me on my phone with 2 people standing behind me, watching me play. One was big. He thought it was someone from our group, and the other was tall and thin. No one in our group was tall and thin. I freaked out. We still camp there every year. But I never go near the shed and go to bed when my wife is tired. 14. When I was a kid, my brother's room was next to mine. One afternoon, He asked what I was doing last night, laughing so much, surprised. I asked for details. He said, around 3 a.m., your laughing woke me up. It sounded like you were pacing in your room, laughing. I told him I wasn't home last night. I slept at a friend's. His face went pale. To this day, he insists it was my laugh, as I have a very distinctive one. 15. I started a new job in a very old building, definitely pre-war. One evening, I stayed late to finish work. My floor was nearly empty as I packed up to leave. Before going, I needed the bathroom, so I headed there. As I approached the door, I saw someone in a pink shirt and khaki pants, exactly what I was wearing, open the door and walk in. I was annoyed, as I don't like using the bathroom with others. Still, I went in because I needed to pee. But when I entered, the bathroom was completely empty. The air felt heavy, silent enough to hear my heartbeat. I stood frozen, feeling like 10 minutes, probably 15 seconds, then turned and left. I had nightmares about that bathroom for weeks. Compared to other stories, it seemed simple, but it shook me. Something was very wrong. Thankfully, I work from home now. 16. The house I grew up in was haunted. From my bedroom, I could see down the hallway to the living room. My parents' room was across from mine. Past the living room, many late nights, I heard someone walking in circles in the living room, though I was the only one awake, and we had no pets. I didn't dare tell anyone, afraid they'd think I was crazy. Years later, I moved out for college. After graduating, I hit financial trouble. By then, my parents had bought a new house, and the old one was empty. They planned to rent it. They invited me to stay there temporarily. I refused, not wanting to return. When my mom asked why, I admitted I thought the house was haunted. She froze, looked at me, and said, "You heard her too?" Turns out, she'd heard the same noises for years but never said anything. Afraid of being called crazy, just like me. 17. My grandmother and her family had a strange experience they rarely talked about. To escape an abusive husband, she fled with her kids and stayed in an old, drafty, eerie house. It wasn't comfortable, but it was the only safe place they had while looking for something better. My eldest uncle said that while living there, he often saw a pale, middle-aged woman in old-fashioned clothes standing at his bedroom door, staring at him and his siblings. Sometimes, she stood at the foot of his bed, just watching silently. It made him uneasy, like she didn't want them there. He didn't tell anyone, afraid it would panic the family, and they had no other options. Years later, at a family gathering, he brought it up. That's when my grandmother revealed she'd also seen a woman in pale clothes staring at her. She always felt the place was creepy and wanted to leave as soon as possible. 18. I used to work night shifts at a group home for people with severe mental disabilities or illnesses. In one house, I kept hearing scratching from inside the walls. I thought it was squirrels, but despite setting traps, we caught nothing. It was odd. but not enough to make me believe in the supernatural. One night, around 3 a.m., I was watching TV in the living room after the residents were asleep. Suddenly, the doorbell rang frantically, like someone was pressing it repeatedly. I ran to the door, but when I opened it, no one was there. Note the living room faces the front door, which has a large window covering 2/3 of it. And the entrance is a 20-30-foot hallway with 12-foot brick walls on both sides. To hide, someone would have to run the entire hallway and duck around a corner, nearly impossible without me seeing. Thinking a resident was pranking me, I checked on everyone, but they were all asleep. Just after I finished, the bell rang again. Just as frantically, I ran out. Still no one. Determined to catch the culprit, I turned off all lights except the TV and stood by the door. 20 minutes later, it rang again. I turned on the hallway light, looked through the window, opened the door, still no one. As I closed the door, the bell rang non-stop for 15 minutes, like something was taunting me. I locked the door, turned on all lights, and sat trembling on the sofa. Every time I tried to go outside for a smoke, the bell rang, as if it knew my intentions and was reminding me it was still there. I think it was a demon. That place was full of negative energy, like many group homes, with stories of suffering. One resident had witnessed their parents' murder and gone mad. Another with schizophrenia heard 8 personalities in their head. Both often had objects fall off shelves at night and screamed at people who weren't there. Years later, at another facility, someone had hanged themselves in a bathroom. The bathroom door always slammed shut at night if left open, despite policy requiring it to stay open. These experiences made me question if it was all just mental illness. 19. A few years ago, my friends and I were driving through small roads in a forest rumored to be haunted. One friend, bored, rolled down the window and shouted, "Do something," or something like that. 5 seconds after he rolled the window up, a loud knock hit the window right by me. The timing was too perfect to be random. We'd seen odd things in that forest before, but they could be explained by shadows or animals. This knock couldn't. Nothing hit the car. The car wasn't moving, and it sounded exactly like a human hand knocking. Later, we heard a scream like a woman's voice in the forest, also unexplained. It was truly bizarre. 20. In 2019, my family vacationed in Indonesia. I shared a hotel room with my sister. The first morning, she said that the previous night, she saw someone walk across the room and look out the window, even hearing the wooden floor creak. She often gets sleep paralysis, so we brushed it off. 2 days later, I woke up startled in the middle of the night and saw someone sitting at the foot of my bed, covering their face and crying. Thinking it was my sister, I sat up and asked, "Are you okay?" But I froze when I saw, out of the corner of my eye, my sister still asleep in her bed. The figure, like a vivid shadow, was a woman with long hair in a ponytail, terrified. I slowly lay back down, grabbed my phone, and played YouTube videos. Sounds silly, but I didn't know what else to do. I glanced up occasionally, seeing the figure still there, then back to the videos. This went on for about 30 minutes. When I looked again, she was gone. 21. Last June, I was house and pet sitting for my mom and stepdad. I was alone in the house. While video calling my best friend, I was on the couch with my laptop on my lap. My friend suddenly said they saw a woman standing behind me in the kitchen. 22. In the summer of 2015, when I was young, I visited my cousin's house. We were playing in the backyard of his grandparents' house when we heard a scream and loud banging from the living room window. Looking up, we saw a woman sobbing, pounding on the window, panicked. We shouted, asking if she was okay, but she told us to leave her alone and slammed the window shut. His grandparents weren't home. Strangely, when we ran inside, the woman was gone, scared. We pretended nothing happened. 23. When I was young, I joined Job Corps in Astoria, Oregon, a fresh experience, like a mix of college and the military. During the first week, we had a meeting in the hall to share and ask questions. When it was my turn, I asked about the loud talking from the room next to mine and footsteps in the hallway above, especially since everyone had to turn off lights at the same time. I didn't want trouble. I was just trying to understand the place. Instantly, the room went silent. People of all ages and backgrounds were stunned. They paled when they learned the room next to mine was a storage closet with no one in it, and the hallway above was the roof, with no walkway. The place used to be a naval base. 24. This story comes from a book about Irish ghost legends, and it always haunts me. 40 years ago, a poor man was killed by the Blessington steam tram between Jobstown and Temple Oak. Soon after, I went to the January fair in Nass and stayed at the pub until 11 p.m. On my way home, passing the tree-lined Sagat Road, I felt someone tap my shoulder. I said, "Good night," but got no reply. Annoyed, I muttered a curse and kept walking, humming a song. A bit later, I was tapped again. Angry, I said, "If you don't mind, go somewhere else." Still no answer. It happened again in the dark, and this time I stayed silent, sweating from unease. I walked faster. At another spot, I was tapped again. Panicked, I ran for my life home. When I got there, I pounded on the door. My neighbor opened it, his face horrified, staring behind me. I turned and saw a man in full clothing, but with no head. In terror, we ran inside, locked the door, and prayed for the soul outside. This story always chills me, especially since I live near that area. 25. In the late 80s, when I was about 8 or 9, I slept with my grandma in the master bedroom. In the middle of the night, I woke to a female voice calling my name. When I opened my eyes, I saw a glowing green head with no body, hovering above my face. It was a woman's face, with jet black hair and eyes, and her neck was made of sparkling crystal, frozen in fear. I rolled over to wake my grandma. She woke up, listened to my story, and told me to go back to sleep while she stayed up reading the Bible. The next morning, I told my two brothers as I described the green face, black hair, and black eyes. My younger brother went pale with a horrified look. He asked, "Was her neck made of crystal?" Turns out, a few weeks earlier, he'd seen the same woman in that room when he woke up to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. 26. This is my mom's story from when she was a teenager. Moonlight often shone onto her wardrobe door, creating an oval shape. One night, she dreamed of goblin-like creatures stepping out of the oval. Like it was a portal, they surrounded her bed, teasing her, and one sat on the rocking chair by her bed. When she woke up startled, the chair was still rocking slightly. Maybe she accidentally bumped it while dreaming, causing it to rock. Still, this story scared me as a kid. 27. Last year, I was hiking in a sparse forest on a hill. I stopped to take photos of leaves. The trail was narrow, so when I saw a large person approaching, I stepped aside 2 steps to let them pass. But when I stepped back onto the trail, they were gone. They weren't among the trees or walking away. They just vanished. I was terrified. 28. While vacationing in Egypt. On the first night at the hotel, I woke up startled in the middle of the night. When I opened my eyes, I saw the pale face of an old man staring at me, then disappearing. The image was so vivid that, terrified, I slept in a different room for the next 3 nights with all the lights on. 29. I can't find this story anywhere, but does anyone remember a girl home alone? She was on her bed, talking on the phone with a friend. Suddenly, she dropped the phone, and when she picked it up, she saw a face reflected under her bed. She stayed calm, kept talking, then casually said she was going to shower and hung up. She ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and escaped through the window. She called the police, and when they arrived, they caught a man standing right outside the bathroom door, holding a knife. 30. When I was about 11, a month or 2 after my aunt passed away, I had a strange experience. That night, I was lying in bed trying to sleep. Suddenly, the guitar hanging on my wall started making sounds like someone was strumming it. I looked around, thinking my dad was pranking me, but no one was there. The noise lasted about 10 minutes. Scared, I called my parents and slept in my brother's room all night. After that, I didn't hear the guitar again. A few nights later, something similar happened, but with a clock radio. I was lying in bed when it started playing faint radio static, and a song came on. I'd never heard the song before. It lasted about 10 minutes, with lyrics mentioning details about my aunt, like her smoking and related things. The lyrics also talked about my time or something like that. The next morning, I searched for the song's lyrics, but found nothing. Like it didn't exist. Writing this at night scares me, making me turn on my flashlight and brighten my phone screen. That song was too specific about my aunt, It's truly terrifying.